Welcome to our podcast, Breaking Barriers. My name is Sumaya.
I'm Sophia.
I am Nermin.
And I'm Annika.
We are third-year students studying social service and doing our development thesis in collaboration with Mieli Without Borders.
So, as mentioned, we are collaborating with Mieli Without Borders, an organization that works tirelessly to promote mental well-being and support for foreign language speakers. So, more about Mieli Without Borders. They share information on well-being, mental health awareness, and how to use the existing mental health care system. Supports people in organizing well-being workshops and all kinds of different peer support groups. It guides people in need to the right services.
And our thesis topic is exploring the intersection of mental health and racism among foreign language speakers in Finland. So we're thrilled to have you join us as we delve into important conversations about mental health and racism, particularly focusing on the experiences of foreign language speakers in Finland.
In each episode, we will be sharing our perspectives and personal stories, insights, discussing various aspects of mental health and racism. Today's topic is peer support, which is crucial in helping individuals cope with mental health challenges and experiencing racism.
Yeah, okay, but first let's define the different forms of peer support. So, peer support involves people with similar experiences coming together to help each other. It can be incredibly powerful, especially for those who have faced discrimination and mental health challenges. And there's also different kinds of peer support, like community-based peer support, and that is defined as community peer support refers to a form of assistance and encouragement provided by individuals who share similar experiences or backgrounds. It typically involves people with lived experiences of a particular issue or challenge. So, for example, when we did the interview with the professional, he gave a lot of good examples about different kinds of peer support services that are available in Finland. But then he also mentioned that one of the most common mistakes when they are designing the services in Finland is that they put all foreign language speakers kind of in the same category, as if the people would have all the same challenges or same backgrounds, etc., which is obviously not true. And one example that came to my mind was I did one of my placements in one of the palvelukeskus in Helsinki, and we were at this social service based event where people were connecting with each other and kind of thinking out loud about the provided services in the Helsinki area, for example. And I overheard this very good conversation that the people were having, that they were thinking out loud that, hey, should we have support group for Somali women, for example, because it's how do you say it, it's in their culture it's more that the men take care of the bills and all this practical stuff. So they were basically thinking that if the husband dies or the women are some other ways having struggles in their life, that how would they be able to handle those things. So I found that conversation that it kind of was a good example of also what our the person we interviewed said, that has anyone contacted anyone from the Somali community, or was this just the same way as the Finnish social services are thinking about the services, that they are creating these groups and having these ideas without actually contacting the people that they want to create these groups, for example. So I think that was a good example for this.
So basically make an assumption of the need without discussing
exactly.
With the community what is actually the need, what do they need, what kind of support, what kind of services that they personally need. Because it could be some of the people, maybe Somali community might need this support, but then making assumption that is every single Somali woman.
Yeah, it's the generalization.
Yeah, I think
again.
that's where everything might
not go wrong, but maybe again it should be more client approach.
Yeah.
Client based.
I think
in
seeing
the
everybody as an
designing.
individual
Yeah.
rather than seeing everybody's like the same, because
Yeah.
everybody has, we might come from different
Like backgrounds.
backgrounds, yeah, but then everybody might have different struggles, challenges in life, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration when assessing the need.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, like if I or like somebody close to me would be struggling with something, we wouldn't try. The first option wouldn't be like to seek the government services. I think the first thing we would do would be like more community based approach, community peer support, where the community uplifts and like supports the person whatever they're going through, and like together with the community they try to like find different options to help the person.
Yeah, and I think that's a really like good example because like in Finnish context, like that, like the first thing you would do, like if someone close to me or someone or like even me, if I had like any kind of issues in life, like even my family, like if I would tell it to my like close family or friends or whoever, they would not be like, okay, let's come and see you and sit down and like support you and talk about this. Like they would also advise me to like just first seek for the governmental support services. So I think that's a big difference. And also when talking about these like peer support based social services in Finland overall, that it's like the approaches are so different, like
But
culturally.
but I also think, because with my family, with the immigrant background, I think since young age, I think I all realized that the different services are not for some people. It's more about the language barrier, like the representation in these services. So everybody might feel already like nobody's gonna get that problem they have. They're not gonna be understood. So already that is like a whole huge thing. So that's why I think the community peer support is more how would I say it, more sustainable, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
To add to the conversation, in my experience, I grew up in the U.S. and the U.S. is quite like individualistic, but in terms of the culture, but also it is quite family oriented because it is kind of based on the nuclear family structure. But also with this, there is a lack of services that people have access to, and this puts people in a position there where they have to create systems of care or mutual aid. And this reminds me of the recent events where in Finland now, where at the University of Helsinki there has been a Palestine encampment for a month about, and with the Palestine encampments they had this kind of similar structure of mutual aid. They were supported by the local community, especially the local Palestinian families. And this place and this space, it became a place where people could support each other just by being there. And it also became a place where people had a place to kind of collectively grieve what is happening in Palestine. And people could just come and exist without necessarily paying for something. There was an art corner, there was a library that was created where you could borrow books and return them, and then people could support each other, but also brainstorm and plan actions. And it became a place of also like educating in many ways. Like there were workshops and discussion series. Like people from different organizations and communities would come and do informational discussions. Like they would facilitate this on different social issues, social struggles, and just an overall question of liberation. But all this reminds me of is in this source that I read, where it's a book called Participation, Marginalization, and Welfare Services by, I'm gonna butcher this, but Alia Lena Matthews and Lars Ugerhoff. In that book, they mention that there is a risk that the service users' sense of self and self-determination will decrease, as well as have an increase on the reliance on the system. So, like you were saying, Sumaya, especially when considering that these systems are lacking in centering the service group.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, this is why I feel like these university Palestine encampments are so, like, groundbreaking or such a big movement, is because they're disrupting the reliance on systems that are upheld by large funders or governments, and that don't necessarily always center the service groups. And this reminds people that all of these encampments remind people that mutual aid and interdependent care that are built by and center communities are often more sustainable structures of care. But yeah, this is not only possible, but also liberating and very necessary.
I also agree with that.
Even though the peer support services exist, there are also a lot of challenges in that side of the support, because they really heavily rely on volunteers and they lack sufficient funding. And it makes it challenging to provide high quality support for people who need it.
I don't think it's sustainable to expect volunteers to take on that role, to offer the support, especially when it can be also triggering. It can take a lot of time, and
yeah, it's a bit unrealistic to expect people to carry that on for every session without getting like paid.
yeah, and I
that.
think a lot of the reason, I think many people are also like relying more to the community peer support, where it's more like affordable to everybody. Also, like, it's easy to connect with people.
Yeah, and I think a large part of the issue is that a large majority of the learning that is done by volunteers is informal, not formal. So the way that the state recognizes it in order to fund it properly is, or recognize the legitimacy of it, will most often fall short. So this is due to the structural foundation that voluntary work is based on. And this isn't to diminish like how much of a commitment that volunteers have to whatever cause they are at, but at the structural core of voluntary work is the capitalistic system, which therefore is often exploitative.
Yeah, and also I think it's very that if we're talking about like big societal like things, like for example in our context now, the racism and mental health intersection, I think it's a bit also unfair and unrealistic to like expect volunteer-based groups to kind of give all the proper support that those individuals need, whatever their background is or their like life situation in general, if there's like no like formal education for those subjects. Like people can, for example, get triggered or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that while these like topics are very stigmatized to talk about, if a person trusts someone to open up to speak about these, it is very important for that person to be consistent with the person they're opening up to. In the voluntary case, it might be that the volunteers might change every time when the groups occur. So it's really important to consider the professional work and to hire professionals to work in this area.
Yeah, I agree with that, Nermin. And also, we researched that 1/3 of foreign language speakers in Finland feel that they would have needed support for mental health challenges but didn't reach out. And one of the main reasons was the availability of information in a language that they understand, or rather, lack thereof. And I think all of these things that we mentioned earlier, like language barrier, cultural differences, and the lack of trained peer supporters from diverse backgrounds, I think all of that can make an actual change if it would be available. The need for like targeted services that are inclusive and culturally competent, increase in funding for community programs, and just generally just raising awareness about available services can make a difference, because a lot of times there can be times where somebody doesn't know the services that are available for them, and it's really difficult to like search the websites to find this information.
So, when talking about like peer support in general, and now since our theme is kind of like the racism and mental health aspect, I think it's also too like important to say like how much peer support can on its own like help individuals like mental health and make them feel more understood and like less alone. And it also helps to build resilience and can complement the existing professional mental health services. So I think that also needs to be in the conversation when designing like the services in Finland as well, that how much the peer support already in itself can increase the well-being of someone. And also when discussing mental health and racism particularly, it can be like challenging in environments where these topics are stigmatized or rarely addressed anyways. And I think our working life partner Mieli Without Borders also talked about with us when we had meetings that it's very important like to discuss that with the foreign speakers in Finland, that these like subject in itself may not even exist in those people like in their conversations at all, like for example mental health. So yeah, in Finland, as in many other countries, this can lead to feelings of isolation and shame for those who want to share their experiences. So it's not the same as like, okay, let's just have these groups about racism and mental health and so people can share. So it's not that easy when we're talking about so like stigmatized subjects. So overall, like everything we talked today in this episode, I think that we can all agree that there's still a lot to be like improved in the Finnish context, with already the planning of the services and making it more accessible, and the language barriers and all these different things that need to be taken into consider.
Yeah, and also like the already existing peer support shouldn't lump all the foreign language speakers together without acknowledging the specific issues faced by the individual from different backgrounds.
And how many people are wanting and needing the support but just don't know where to find it? Like, that is a huge issue.
So basically more targeted services,
Yeah, definitely.
increasing the fundings for community programs, and just generally like raising awareness about available services, so there's everybody can at least know where they can seek it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is just the start of a conversation.
There's always more to do.
Yes, absolutely. And in our second episode, we will be talking about
What is missing from the field?
What is missing from the field? So
yes.
Yeah. So listen to our second episode. We are your hosts, Sumaya.
I'm Sophia.
I'm Nermin.
And I'm Annika.
and you're listening to our podcast, Breaking Barriers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.